Hello, listeners, subscribers, watchers, and fans. Welcome to another chapter of the SDR DiscoCall show. Now, if this is your first time joining this show is all about speaking to predominantly sales development reps or BDRs working in the world of tech sales to get insights into what is this career all about, how do you navigate it, and get best practices from great people across the globe. And my role is just a host, where you hear me talking and asking questions to these great guests. But today, we have a little bit of a switch up where we like to call this a special episode, which is a dynamic duo, because within our midst, we have an account executive joining this show today as well. So a bit of a backstory. How did this show come about? So with one of these guests, we've been conversing on LinkedIn for quite a while. And funny enough, one of their current employees was one of the first guests on this show. So this person I'm pointing to is Joshua. Joshua, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
And it's great to finally have you on board. So Joshua, for the listeners, watchers out there, could you tell us who are you, what do you currently do, and where do you currently work, sir?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Joshua White. We're currently working at Yapily as an account executive. Yapily is an open banking infrastructure provider. I've been here for about a year. Prior to that, I was working in another fintech company, Payoneer, B2B cross-border payments. And obviously you can tell by the accent, I'm not originally from the UK, but I've been living here for about 3 years now after moving from Hong Kong.
Nice. Thank you very much for joining, Joshua, and coming over to your co-pilot. Montoya, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me as well.
Thank you so much, sir. And Montoya, for the listeners out there, could you tell us who are you, what is your role, and what do you do at Yapily?
Great. So I'm Montoya Wilson. I am an SDR at Yapily. I've been with the company for about a year and a half now, and I'm from New York. Currently in London. I've been here for about 2 years, and it's been a great journey so far.
Absolute pleasure to have you on board, so thank you so much. And Montoya, outside of sales, what things do you like to get up to? What sort of activities float your boat?
Well, I'm a pretty active guy. Growing up in sports, I've always been an athlete. So from swimming, I was swimming in college. Now I'm more so into the gym and cycling and so forth. I did do a bit of bodybuilding in my early 20s. Now I'm more retired, but the training and the daily routine is still there. So very health conscious and just being active.
I love it. Hopefully we can bring some gains to this show, and 100% it's all about consistency and keeping healthy. And Joshua, how about yourself? You've had a bit of a sporting career in your background as well, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a way that Montoya and I were able to establish a good relationship when we first started working together. Was that I played professional basketball for almost 10 years internationally, and I've always been quite health conscious. Not the bodybuilder that Montoya is, but I do stay active in the gym myself.
Love it. Thank you so much. So for all of our listeners and watchers, what we normally do at this point is we share our screen. So for our YouTube fans out there, where we'll be visiting the LinkedIn profiles of our guests. And as a gentle reminder, we'll place their LinkedIn URLs in all of our show notes so that if you want to connect with them, ask them any questions or anything that you heard about in the show today, feel free to reach out. So coming over to yourself, Joshua, as you said, retired professional athlete. You've had an extensive career, my sir. So as we've seen, we've been a student mentor, head counselor, a chess instructor, so you must be quite a strategic guy, basketball coach, professional basketball player, and obviously an account executive. So could you kind of walk us through the highlights of your career and how did somebody that went from this type of field then end up in tech sales?
Yeah, it's not the traditional path that you would see as your normal AE, I would say. And by the way, I'm actually not that good at chess. I think the energy there was that I'm good at leading and maybe teaching. And so I was able to kind of manage a classroom in that sense. It also helped a lot in my basketball coaching career. I supplemented my professional basketball playing career with coaching. And on the back end of that, I was able to build essentially a basketball agency. At the time, I didn't totally realize how that was working or how that translated into growing into being a sales professional. But essentially I was cold calling teams asking if I could play for them, and they would say no most of the time, because why would they take me?
Yeah.
Instead, I would, at the end of the call, I would say, hey, well, what do you need? And they say, hey, I need a 7-foot tall man or a 6'9" woman to join our team. So then I created, at the time, what I didn't realize was partnership channels with current players. And I would say, hey, I can introduce you to teams if you can introduce me to your contacts or points of authority at clubs. And I kept practicing those exercises until I was able to place myself with teams and place the other players with teams, building an agency as well. Leveraging kind of those skills on top of getting a degree in business admin, I was able to, land my first fintech role at Payoneer. It was a really good learning experience and very much an entry-level role, but the sales team there, and actually the director of sales was actually a current GB triple jumper.
Oh, wow.
And many other members of the sales team were former or current Olympians, GB athletes. So they were able to kind of bring me along really quickly by, using the language and mentalities that we're used to as athletics to apply to, the sales disciplines. I very much overachieved my targets, and I learned a lot from that team in general, and I was able to leverage that to come to Yapily as an account executive, where now when I've kind of shared that backstory, it does make more sense, and a lot of these skills translate really well into this career.
I love it. Like the vision that I'm getting in my head, Joshua, is like with these like athletes working within sales, like when it comes to team building events, you guys must get super competitive.
There's a lot of competitiveness where I think people don't even realize I'm competing with them at times. It's just me in my own mind setting my own targets and goals. But even salespeople, outside of sports, right? It's kind of in the competitive nature. So there is a lot of that going on, a lot of banter in the group chats about who's doing what and who's getting the outcomes. So it's pretty exciting.
I love that. So like the key things that I heard there is, like coaching people, instructing people, cold calling, like to get into basketball teams as well. And then obviously meeting that director of sales at Payoneer with him being a triple jumper as well, and then getting into this tech space as well. What would you say, is it about coaching or, instructing teams? What is it about that floats your boat and you like about that aspect?
I think it's a continuous challenge. I think you could learn how to do it successfully with one group or one person, and that doesn't mean it translates to the next group or the next person. So it's just constantly, learning from people and learning from your experiences. I think kind of the underlying skill sets or attributes or things that I find value in this element is the networking and relationship building. And that I think is a big part of the teamwork of trying to be a leader, trying to grow into that leadership position, as well as being successful in an account executive role.
Thank you so much. And just out of curiosity, what did the cold call pitch kind of sound like back in those days, like when you were trying to call these people to get into these teams? How did you open it up, and how did you kind of close it?
I had an Excel sheet where I would, pick a country, let's say Spain, and I would look down, they have 3 professional divisions. I put every single club in there, and then I would just use the resources on the internet to either, copy and paste an email to whomever, trying to get in touch with authority, or when I finally got numbers, at this point I was using, credits on Skype to make international calls.
Wow.
And sometimes paying attention to the hours, just kind of being ignorant to global timescales, and calling people at 3:00 in the morning and being like, "Hi, you don't know me, but I would love to play basketball for your team." They found out I was 6'2" and often would hang up the phone, or before they did, I would try to get in the second elements where I was pitching them players.
I love that. And I think any salesperson that's listening to this podcast or watching this video is like, okay, if this guy didn't work in sales and he was doing this, like you were finding tools, you were finding numbers, and you were like basically cold calling this. Did you learn this from anywhere? How did you come to that strategy?
Yeah, just out of necessity. I wasn't good enough for an agent or manager to represent me, and it's a bit of chicken and the egg as it is working in tech or fintech. to get these roles. And so I just knew had to play a numbers game, that if I called enough people, if I had enough touch points, that someone sooner or later would say yes and give me a chance, even if, they made a mistake by saying yes. But I could, hopefully prove myself in that environment. And, luckily I did have the hard skill sets in basketball to prove that. I was able to perform and then leverage those performances to get, more opportunities.
Wow, a self-coached cold caller. I love that, Joshua. That's so cool. Thank you so much. And coming over to Montoya yourself, so we're going to check out your LinkedIn profile. And as a reminder, you can always find the URLs in the comment section below if you'd like to connect with our guests. So, Montoya, with your experiences as well, you've had some quite cool ones where you've been an entrepreneur for your own business, director of aquatics, a teacher, sales consultant, sales manager, and then most recently in the last year and a half, working as an SDR under growth for Yapily. Like, what's your story, sir?
Yeah, so I guess my story begins at university. While at Malloy, I was doing a bit of bodybuilding, trying to compete in men's physique division. Spent a lot of time studying, and then when I'm not studying, a lot of time in the gym. Lots of people would ask me, what are you training for? I'm like, explaining to them. They're like, very strange, but how can I get to look like you? You get the 1 and you get the 2 and then the 3, and then you're like, you know what, maybe I could be supplementing my income by doing personal training. But that required me actually working at the gym and actually spending a lot of time, which took away from studying. And my day job at the time was being an aquatics instructor, teaching kids how to swim. So I ended up deciding, hey, maybe I could do this online and maybe teach people how to do things by sending them videos and so forth that you just basically film on your phone. So I made business cards without any way of like any business model or anything. I just made business cards. I started handing it out to people at the gym. People who would say, hey, great bod, whatever the case may be, give them a card. I can help you. And then it just started. Just start printing workouts, making a few workout videos, giving advice around stuff I eat and stuff you can eat to help speed up the process. So that's how that started. Turns out that it was really going well after a time, and you're like, now people are sending you photos. Hey man, you've helped me lost 20 pounds. You helped me gain 20 pounds. I feel great. I look great. I'm like, you know what? I should post this on social media. Get more coverage. So I did. Ended up doing that for quite some time. It helped me pay for college. So it was very much a good way of making a bit more extra money. Yeah, from there, I got a bit more responsibilities at the pool, running the entire pool area, hiring lifeguards, teachers, and schedules and all that stuff. Then once I graduated from university, I was like, you know what? It's time for the next chapter. I spent a lot of time teaching kids, teaching people how to train and so forth. And maybe teaching was what's next for me. So went for a job interview at a charter school in New York, got the job, started working. It was really great experience. I learned a lot about myself, learned what's required for being in a classroom setting and teaching on a daily basis, what teachers go through. It is a really tough job. I think those experiences what led me into being an SDR. It's a lot about patience. It's a lot about listening, being very attentive, and then questioning yourself at the end of the day, hey, what didn't go so well? And how can I better myself for the next day? Because you're showing up not for yourself, you're showing up for someone else, you're showing up for little people. And then also taking the time to congratulate yourself for the things that did go well and the things that didn't go well yesterday, but it went well today. And you're like, yes, small wins. Okay, there's a room for improvements. So after spending my tenure as a teacher, I decided, you know what, these skills is very much transferable in business, and I could really sell. So started looking for a sales job, and I found Home Advisor, which was really, really good foundation for getting into sales. I went for an in-person interview, and I had to pitch. I had to pitch them my personal training gig, and the guy was like, can you actually train me after this? And I was like, well, I think I got the job. And he's like, definitely. So that was another great experience. I had no history with cold calling, but it was very much cold calling centric. And this is where I made my bones, calling 200 people a day, people randoms, that are in the construction business, trying to sell them leads. And it was a great foundation for getting over the fear of cold calling. I learned you just got to jump in, feet first. You're going to get a lot of no's, but don't worry, you know, this is in the learning process. So it was very much a learning experience, and learning that things are not always going to go your way. But when you get those small wins, they feel like you've won the Super Bowl or something. And then once I moved to the UK, got another sales role in tech sales. It was a bit of it was a startup, so a lot of all hands on deck type scenario. It was selling, it was account management, it was a bit customer success, a bit of accounting. So it was another great intro to seeing what is out there, but also learning a whole bunch of different skills, which made me an even better salesperson, having those discovery type calls with different companies in different industries, and learning how to listen and understand what they need, so that you could then pitch based on that. So now I'm here at Yapily.
I love that. That's an amazing story. And I'm imagining all of that. So like, you know, and some of that resonates with me, because like what you're saying, like, okay, like you were, you know, bodybuilding, you were training people, asking, okay, what are you actually doing? And then you're walking them through the process, and then, you know, them asking you, can you do the same for me? And then, you know, you give them plans, you write out nutritional stuff, they start then sending you results, pictures like the before and after, and you're like, hell yeah, this is very cool. And then, you know, you then start putting out business cards. The same way with me, like when I was with customer success, people would ask me sales tips, and they kept asking. And I always say, I don't get paid for this, so I can't do this all the time. But then I thought, well, actually, I could get paid for this. So that's when I launched my own company, right? And similar to you, putting on social media, trying to get the name of Happy Selling out and everything. And then coming into that element of, you know, teaching as well. So, like you said, you're there to figure out what worked well in the class, what didn't work well, helping these young people, showing up for them. And I'm noticing this coaching vibe coming from the both of you, like helping people. And that's kind of what we do in sales, right? We coach people to a new mindset or a new idea, and we have to help them learn. And sometimes they don't always learn the first time around, and we got to keep hitting those students and prospects and letting them know this is how it works, right? And then cutting your teeth within that sales job, doing 200 sales calls a day, like you said, making your bones. Then going into another sales position where you're doing, you know, 360 kind of role, where you're not only just getting those customers in, but you're doing element of customer success. And then joining the Vibe and Tribe, which is Yapily. I think that's a pretty cool career. So if we come back to yourself, Joshua, for a lot of our listeners and watchers who are predominantly SDRs, you know, most of them want to aspire to this role of an account executive. I did as well, because I thought that's where all the guts and glory is. That's where all the money is. And, you know, your success, you become an AE. In your own opinion, imagine if you're speaking to your old sports colleagues or friends, right? And you come to them and say, yeah, I'm doing this AE role. How would you define what an AE is, and what does it actually mean to be an AE to you?
I think I have a funny answer and I have a realistic answer. Sometimes it feels like I'm a glorified secretary. What I mean by that is not to discredit secretaries or anyone in general, but it's the reality is my role is to facilitate many different departments in question. So there could be issues with, when legal contracts, when legals are out, I need to facilitate the legal teams. With compliance, I need to facilitate the compliance teams, the dev teams, the product teams. So there's a lot of, facilitating meetings, talking to the right people, but that's also one of the beauties of the role, is that you get a really large scope of the entire business, and you get to communicate with everyone from every department. So it gives you a really good understanding of how the business actually functions, what everyone does, and then you can start to learn how to add value to those different departments. So you're not just only calling them to bother them about a contract. You can start to learn, okay, this is what they get, these are their KPIs, or what they get judged for. This is how I can help facilitate them to make sure that this is a two-way relationship. But I mean, overall, the AE role is, 360 sales. You have a sales qualified opportunity that you need to educate them in most cases, and bring them along through the commercial conversations, through the legal conversations, up until you can get that contract signed and handed over to, in our case, implementation engineers. Sometimes it would be customer success managers in other businesses.
That's a pretty solid answer. And if you're speaking to basketball or family and friends and saying succinctly, what does the AE do? How would you explain it to them?
I'm a closer. Very simply put, my job is to close deals.
I love that. So again, with our listeners that are listening in, some of us maybe think, okay, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do. And then there may be others where sounds cool, sounds scary. I don't know if that's what I want to do. Starting off with Montoya, that's kind of a position that we all start at, and we get a really good insight into what somebody like Joshua does. But Joshua, in your own opinion, what things should people be considering if they're going to go into a job like yours? What should they think about first before applying?
I think that it's important to have kind of the BDM SDR experience under your belt first, whether that's you did that job exactly, or kind of like my background is different. I did do it in other ways, not the traditional way, but it's good to know what it is to make 100 cold calls and to deal with the rejections, and then also to call someone 8 times. On an 8th time they say yes. It's good to understand those experiences. The AE role, I don't think, if you're an SDR, it is for every single SDR to want to be in AE. Some SDRs might want to go into implementation roles or pre-sales engineer roles, where they're actually more interested in the tech side of things than they are on the commercial side of things. The SDR role isn't about commercials as much as it is about qualifying and finding, potentially good customers. Whereas the AE role can be kind of shrewd sometimes when you're talking with customers and dealing with prospects, and especially when it comes to the commercial sense. And then you're going to feel that pressure from the top down as well too, when you're dealing with your management. So it's a good role, but respectfully, it's not for everyone, because people have different, mentalities and goals, and personalities.
100%. And to even give my own experience, I always wanted to be an AE. When I became the AE, I did it for a year and a half, and I realized I just didn't like it. And again, there was nothing wrong with the role per se, but it just didn't fulfill me the way that I thought or pre-imagined it to do so. I found it, doing the demos, having conversations with procurement, with legal, it was just a minefield, and it used to stress me the hell out. And then I got my VP of sales saying, okay, what's your number? What's your commit? Oh, okay, I need to forecast. I need to do this. And I was more happy of once giving the demo, seeing the customers signed, and then seeing how they grew, and then thinking about, upsell potential. So I found, I did have a hunter mentality, but I had a better persona around being a farmer mentality of helping customers grow. So I transitioned into customer success, and I was much more happier, But to your point, being within the SDR role, you get a lot of insights working alongside your AE and counterpart to see what they're going through. Always asking the question why do you do this, and what's the basis of that? And then you can learn, if you can help out your AE by doing some of those responsibilities, it gives you a good taste if that's the way you kind of want to go, But then coming down to our co-pilot, Montoya, again, SDRs are the lifeline of a company, because out the lifeline, we ain't got no pipeline, right? So we're important, very much so. So for you, what's a typical day in the life of you being an SDR at Yapily? What does your typical day look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think an SDR is like gatekeeper, right? We're the ones who, and also like the opener. We're the ones who we find the companies that we want to work with, the right ones. Make sure they're the actual right fit. Make sure we have what they need, and then basically pitch it, and then build those relationships early on, and then connect them with the AEs and whatever other help we can get inside the commercial team or the technical team to help speed up the process of getting us a signed contract, right? So a typical day for
Oh,
me
yeah.
is basically one, making sure that my pipeline is moving along the way I envision it to, or I would like it to, right? Making sure that everyone that has reached out to me or everyone who has responded to my emails, I've responded to them promptly. Um, Never leave anything for later. Things come
Mm.
up. As an SDR, we're always moving things throughout the pipeline. There's always more being added to the pipeline. The faster you get things done, the more you're gonna get into the pipeline, the more you could focus on what's next to come. So my day is mostly first focusing on that. Next thing, prioritizing what's next. What's the next steps for everyone? Who do I have on for this week? Who do I have on for next week? Who do I have on for next month? Right? It's being an SDR is you have to have very, very clear view on months in advance so that you have things always happening in your pipeline. This might not go through this month, but next month is another month. You have to be prepared. You might need to go on vacation. You might need to take off work for whatever other reason. You need to make sure that you're prepared for that. Then whatever calls you have on for today, right? The calls that you're going to be taking by yourself, you're prepared for those. What do you need to make sure that those calls go well? Do these calls need to be with an AE? Making sure that you reach out to those AE and say, hey, we have this coming up. Please make sure, hey, these are the requirements they're looking for. These are my notes. Giving them that heads up of, hey, we're having this call. I know you have a lot on your plate. We all do. Here's the heads up. This is the stuff that we're going to be talking about on that call. Because you might not know. They might forgot. They might have other things happening, It's just a bit of a nudge to, hey, this is what's happening, without being rude about it, right? So that's what my days look like. I do handle a lot of inbound traffic. I do man the inbound channel here at Yapily. So that's part of my day-to-day, making sure that every inbound lead that we come through I've given them the attention that they need, making sure that we get calls booked in and making sure they're moving through our sales pipeline.
I love that. That's like the Montoya regime process down to a T. That sounds pretty strong, my dude. And obviously, like, you've been there for like a year and a half, and coming into this role in company and helping out inbound. Like, I love inbound as well because these people have requirements, but you equally have to qualify them and see if they're legit and if they're worth the time of our AE. But obviously what you're doing, it sounds very similar to like a thought out strategic plan of how you do your days, your weeks, like how you're going to be going for this quarter. How do you plan your time, or how do you best plan your time as an SDR? Like, how do you do your planning?
You've got to know your targets, right? What are your goals, right? What are your personal goals? What are the goals of your teammates in your team? Like for me, I know that I'm an SDR. I have to work with marketing. They're the ones who are bringing in lots of these leads. It's making sure that I have that communication line open. How much do I need to do this month so that you could hit your targets, right? And having that clear line of with my AE of what do they need so that they could also help me in making sure that we're all working together as a team. At the end of the month, we all can congratulate each other, say, hey, the numbers look great. All right. So for me, I plan my week. First things first is who have I spoken to last week, and set those tasks for myself for the following week to make sure that I check in, and then set clear what's happening on happening this week right now. So I set before on a Sunday evening, I'm like glancing at my calendar, making sure I'm jotting down notes, making sure everyone is on track for the next week and roll over into the next week. So it's an SDR's calendar is very, very packed. There's things always happening, and my way of making sure that no one gets neglected is just do things right away. Like never leave it for next minute or 2 minutes. Just handle it right now.
Yeah, if it can be done, the thought process, if it's doing the dishes, if it's going to the gym, just get the first 5 minutes done, and it's going to get done. Don't leave it for later, otherwise you'll be paying for it later, right?
Oh yeah, when I'm on calls with Josh, he knows I'm writing the email that I'm gonna send to the prospect lead right after.
Nice.
Like it's already being typed out. Like it doesn't matter who has to send it. Like even if he has to send it, I'll send it over to him. He send it off. Like that's what teammates do.
Boom. I love that. And you raised a pertinent point, and I want to come to Josh and get your feedback on it as well. You know, like Montoya, like what you're saying, having to have that sometimes with your conversation with the AE to remind them about stuff that's happening, what's taking place. And I know you've got a lot on your plate, and then handing over like a lead or an opportunity to them. So, you know, I've experienced, and I've had to help mitigate it as a manager of the relationship between SDRs booking something and then handing it over to the AE, and the AE accepting it as a qualified opportunity or saying, no, I don't think it's a fit yet. It's maybe something for pipe later. Or, you know, I've been in the experience of where I've done all my detailed notes for the AE and they get into the meeting and they just start saying, so yeah, tell me more about your problems, or kind of like, why are you speaking to us today? And I sit there, I'm like, I have all the notes there, dude. Like the whole summary's there, like the why, the objective, all of that. And it doesn't happen. But Joshua, for somebody who is quite busy and you have a great SDR like being your co-pilot, what does a good handover from an SDR look like, and how does that help you as an AE?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's really having a good open line of communication with the SDR. So pre and post calls, Montoya and myself and some of the other SDRs as well that we work with, Andrew and Dylan. It's really the same in that, you know, sometimes we'll have a 30-minute call set in the calendar just to a general catch up. Montoya and I will often, our kind of cadences, just notes being sent back and forth ahead of the call. So there is, you know, whatever information can be expressed. And so I don't necessarily ask the same questions, or I can dive a bit deeper into some of the notes or some of the things that have already been acknowledged. And then after the call, Montoya and I, it's pretty much clockwork. We race to huddle each other. Whoever, you know, one of us clicks it quick. We jump on a huddle on Slack and we just have a quick debrief to say, hey, what did you think about that? You know, and then we're both quite honest with each other in terms of like, you know what, there's a couple red flags there. Let's just hold off on converting this one until we can book the next meeting, or until we can get X back, or whatever it is that we decide on. And then I'd also say too, you know, I think we both have built a relationship of trust where it's like, hey, you think it's good, cool, do it. Or I think it's bad, don't do it, you know? So there's not really ever any, you know, arguments over it. It's really open communication. And then truthfully, you know, some ops might slip through the cracks. You know, we say, hey, let's wait a couple weeks, and we do. And then a couple weeks later, you know, Montoya is really good, and some of the other SDRs are really good about, you know, appreciating kind of my role and their role, and they'll ping over, hey, these 3 emails, can you just check and have you had follow-up? What should we do? It's either time to qualify or unqualify this. So I think it's, for us, it's just all about communication and just being really open and trusting each other and our expertise and what we're capable of.
I love that. Thank you so much. And yeah, you're right. It's having that regular cadence of conversations with your co-pilot. And I love that, you know, debriefing after the call. What did you think? What did they think? Because sometimes, you know, a call will happen and the SDR was saying, hopefully that converts, and the AE then goes quiet on them. I've had it done to me. And I'm like, dude, did it happen? Oh, I'll get back to you. I don't know yet. I'll come back to you. But having that regular communication, you know, like trying to mitigate those sort of like debates or heated arguments about it. Like, is it clear cut? And sometimes it's not, you know, it may fall into a no man's land of, until we have that next meeting or we see that potential interest, I can't really count it as an opportunity right now, because I think for our listeners as well, need to understand is that when an account executive commits something into their pipeline, it becomes visible to their boss and the VP of sales, and they have to then give an explanation as to why is it in pipe, and is it commit, is it best case, do we need to qualify it out? They are scrutinized and they have to have a hygienic view on their pipeline as well. But equally, and coming back to you, Montoya, and not to kind of put you on the spot, because there are those opportunities that, they fit all the criteria. We've got the right person into the call, and they have the conversation with the AE, and we potentially see an opportunity, but it doesn't happen with our AE yet because they want to see something else from the prospect first.
Yeah.
How do you best have that conversation with your AE of like, look, it fits a bill, I think it should move forward, but that person may think it's not ready yet. How do you handle that as an SDR?
I think first things first, I think it's very important to understand very, very clear from an AE's perspective, from an engineering perspective or technical perspective on what makes a really good op, right? I feel you could do all this work, but if it doesn't fit technically, then it's not a good fit for the company. And if the AE doesn't get the answers that we need around legal, around volumes and money, and like these are very difficult conversations. Like they're not going to get that deal signed. So I think as an SDR, it's really important to understand the other side of the coin. And when you're going through the process, it's about learning as you go through. And you might have a call and it might go really well and your AE will convert you up. But then pay attention. Did that lead get signed? Did they win that all? Did they lose that up? Is it still in play? Understanding that will really take you back to the drawing board around what the requirements are you should be looking for to qualify an op in the first place, to send it off to the AE. I feel like that's really important. Not just seeing your little cubicle that you sit in and going, hey, this is my job, but really seeing it through. Seeing, did that op win? Did you win that op? Did the company win that op? And why did we win it? What did you do? What didn't you do? And if we didn't win it, why didn't we win it? Did we qualify it too soon? Right? I feel like those are the questions are really difficult sometimes to answer, but going through the process could really help refine the way you do prospecting and the type of discovery calls you do have. And I feel like myself and Josh, we had these conversations quite often. And you'll be surprised. As an SDR, even after we do our little huddle, I go, that's not an op. Before you could even say, like, yeah, that wasn't, I feel like we're missing X, Y, and Z. That wasn't great. But yeah, there is sometimes I feel like an op is an op and it didn't go through. And with that is on this, I think the question is, why didn't you think that was an op? And what kind of information do we need to get for you to say, yes, that's an op? Because from my understanding, I feel like we have fit all X, Y, and Z requirements. But I think it's also being patient and going, all right, let's hold off on it to satisfy it. And I feel like when you have your numbers and your targets to hit on the monthly, sometimes it's really hard. It's really difficult, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like building that trust with your AE and being very upfront and going, hey, I need X, Y, and Z, and going and say, hey, I don't think that's a lead, or I don't think that's an opportunity. I feel like I've made a mistake here, or we should have gone. So your AE is going to trust you, and they're going to trust your judgment. And I feel like that's part of it. But I think it's better to try your best to get as many leads across the board earlier in the month and not wait till the end of the month. But some things are out of our control.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, like building that trust, that's very key. And, like an advice that I always give, like when I've been managing SDR teams and being kind of like the middleman between the AEs, is always say to the AEs, like when you go out and take them for a lunch, or, SDRs, go take your AE to lunch, go out and get to know each other. Let each other know how you get comped and paid. Because there have been a lot of AEs that didn't know how their SDRs get paid. It could be, is it the amount of calls they book, or how many, meetings they've booked within that week, or it could be once it's only converted to an opportunity. A lot of my AEs used to think that my SDRs just get paid for the meeting. I'm like, no, it has to convert to an opportunity. And the mindset that I'd give to my SDRs is what I learned from my AEs. Like, Neil, we don't book meetings for the sake of meetings to hit a number. We book meetings to look to close business. So, you know, what you said was very mature in terms of, is it a technical fit? Is it a commercial fit? You know, are we going to be able to integrate with their APIs? Is it going to fit into their ecosystem? Are we speaking to the right people? Do we know their strategic initiative? Do we know the corporate objective? We need to get all this stuff in, because that's how we paint a picture. Because my AE said to me once, Neil, look, I can give you eggs, milk and flour and you can throw it into a bowl, but it doesn't build a cake. We need to have structure to this deal. And if we don't have that structure, then we don't have a deal. And, you know, he also educated me on CAC, so customer acquisition costs, right? You have to remember, Neil, as an SDR, we pay you a salary. An AE, they get a salary. If we bring, a technical lead into this call, they get paid a salary. And if, you know, we then qualify a lead through, which either churns later down the line, we've just lost money. So that's why we don't just pay for the sake of meetings, but we need to make sure it's fully qualified. And what I love between you two is that you have that conversation, you're able to talk about it and, you know, hold stuff going through if you don't think it's a fit, because ultimately you want to know how you're going to win. And I think when it comes to wins, what I learned as an SDR and an AE is our existing customers. So we'd always look for key win deals. So do we have any information in our CRM to tell us why did we win that deal? And can we look for similarities in the deals that we're currently talking to? And that will give us a higher probability of, okay, we should be talking to these leads. And that way, as an SDR, I knew who to go after. In our sweet spot, it was media, you know, Fortune 500 companies, and we'd have to speak to the CMO, and they had to have a digital transformation project. That's the most likely way we're going to get in. And those were the ops that I wanted to bring over to my AE as well, right?
Yeah.
But, like, you know, you're talking about a good relationship and co-pilot between yourselves. So, like, Joshua, obviously, a lot of people are listening to this and they're like, this sounds like a dream scenario. We need people like this in our organization. This is what we need to do for SDRs. And I can imagine this hasn't been an overnight process, right? So imagine, you know, you've got some new A's that have walked through the door in another tech company and they've got people like Montoya. What advice would you to give them, like 3 bits of advice on building that sort of culture and getting that sort of structure to work in a similar way? What 3 bits of advice would you give to that sales leader?
Yeah, you know, I think something you already said, which is quite important, is the transparency of commissions. Not necessarily the quantifiable. I don't need to know how much you get paid, but how you actually are targeted. You know, because I, as an individual person, AE out or not, as an individual person, don't want to, you know, hurt you. I want to, you know, help you achieve your goals as I would want you to help me achieve my goals, and just in general. So especially in that relationship, I don't want to be the blocker that's, you know, just being a jerk, for lack of better terms, and saying no because it doesn't hit this super high detail.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes there's SQOs that come through that, you know, maybe we could have been a bit stricter on, but I also kind of understand my own personal angle. I'm like, actually, I think I have something I can work with. And then there's some other ones where, you know, you say no because it's, you know what's best for the business, and you know what's best, and like you said, what works in a certain vertical and what doesn't work, and there needs to be a bit more discovery. The open lines of communication are just absolutely huge. You know, Montoya hasn't taken me out for lunch yet, but we do have we do have you know, a friendship, and we do chat and talk and you know, try to be in the office at the same times and things like that. So I think those relationships are important. Don't wait for management to align the teams. Go ahead and work together, and then also educate each other in general. You know, Montoya was already with Yapily, had some experience here before I joined. I leaned on him a lot to just get my baseline knowledge of the business, and he taught me a lot. He taught me how he was leading calls, and I was able to generate how I wanted to lead calls from the stuff I learned from him. And then now in my position, I'm able to, you know, educate and help the SDRs to understand more of the general scope of the business, or why this lead is a good or bad lead. Even if they hit our methodology, they check the box with methodology, there still might be some red flags. And so now we can all learn from each other and grow. And, you know, and especially for a lot of our SDRs who have ambitions to become, you know, senior SDRs, or like I said, implementation engineers or AEs or CSMs. You know, they're able to get a better understanding and have, because of our working relationship, a better understanding of, you know, what they need to achieve and how they can achieve it.
Hallelujah. Thank you very much. And coming to you, Montoya, what 3 bits of advice would you give to an SDR to strengthen their relationship with their AE?
One, understand your business, the company that you're working. First and foremost, and understand the technical aspect, the legal aspect, what how deals get signed. Understand what those criteria need to be. I think it fits for a bigger picture thinking. The way you qualify leads, the way you look at leads, a prospect, it's just bigger picture. Plus more of an understanding of what you're selling and how to sell it best. I think allowing yourself to be very vulnerable, or I guess open with who you are, your working process, what that looks like, what your day-to-day looks like, what you're expecting, and what you would like your relationship to be like with that person, and then understand what that is for them, so then you can meet each other halfway. It is a long-term relationship. You're working with somebody day in and day out for hours, bringing them calls, leads, and so forth. They rely on you as much as you rely on them. And then the next thing, follow up with them. Don't let your sales cycle end with just the handover. Follow up with that AE. Try to shadow them. Try to understand what that process is after you've done, like who they need to go to for technical advice on that lead, who they need to go to for legal advice. What does that look like to get that deal signed? So then that will help you, one, transition to that role next, if that is what you want, but also help you in your prospecting, and also help you with your strengthening your discovery call. And I think those three bases is very, very essential to having a really good relationship and bettering your position as an SDR.
I love that. And especially like where you mentioned, don't just stop your sales cycle with once you pass the lead over to your account executive, follow up on them and find out. Because like with me, I was always curious that, when I booked a meeting, I wanted to know, A, how the meeting went, but also how is the deal progressing? Like what bottlenecks have you seen? Like, are there any objections, or are there any signals as to when they're going to move forward with the solution? And if they do launch, how many users are they going to go with? And, what other offices may they go into it? Because I wanted to know, like, how my AE structure did, because I had no experience. I didn't know how that stuff worked, right? But to your point, shadowing that person that's currently doing, that's what's going to help you get a taste of, is that something I want to do, or how can I do it? And to kind of extend on that, if the AE is comfortable with you taking some of those responsibilities as well when following up on the deal, that's kind of where I cut my teeth just before I move into AE land.
I think even if it isn't actually shadowing, like literally, with them on the follow-up calls, them just including you on the email, seeing you on the email chain as it continues, that will give you a really good picture of how things are going and when people are just not responding or dropping off, whatever the case may be, and what that, I guess, commercial conversations look like. So.
I love it. Thank you so much. So we got some 6 solid bits of advice, both from an AE perspective and an SDR perspective. Thank you, gentlemen. Joshua, there is one question that I do want to ask, because this is a bit of a contentious subject that I've had with AEs, and being an SDR fan, I need to ask it. Right, so with SDRs, predominantly we're prospecting, whether it's inbound and handling leads or going outbound. And with some account executives I've worked with, they're like, it's the SDR's job to prospect and book meetings. As an account executive, should they be doing prospecting? And if so, how much of their time should they dedicate to prospecting?
I love this. Man, sales, you eat what you kill, right? So look, you have targets. In your business, in your business model, can you achieve your targets simply from what the SDR or marketing team generates for you? The answer is probably no, unless you're getting some super deals. And it's no discredit to them. It's just that's not their full responsibility. The AE is absolutely meant to network, build relationships, and work on outbound channels. A few ways that I do so. One is how we came in contact on LinkedIn, and just connecting with everyone, sending a message straight away, making quick introductions, I also go to a lot of events. So whether that's I'm going to a Women in FinTech event this Thursday evening. Last week I was at the retail payments event. I went to a banking as a service event one evening. I went to a crypto event another evening. So just really putting yourself out there. Not only will that generate immediate outbound, immediate network, but it also gives yourself credibility within the space. People will see your face more often, and then maybe one time they come into the inbound channel like, oh, I recognize you from this event. You already have rapport, makes the deal that much easier. So AEs, if you want to look good, if you want to do good, and if you want to excel, you absolutely have to do your own outbound and prospecting.
Thank you very much for ending that debate, and to end it with always be prospecting, whichever side of the fence that you're on, gents and ladies out there. All right, so you've given us some good bits of advice, and I normally ask that question, and I think you guys have already answered about the 3 bits of advice, but to kind of shorten this, Montoya, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, and you're speaking to the young Montoya who's, in training people, they're sending his pictures, and he's just about thinking, I could get into sales, what's that one bit of advice you'd give to him?
Keep going. Like, just keep going. It doesn't matter what it is. It might be too big. You might not know it. You might not feel confident about it, but just keep going. You're gonna get there.
Thank you very much. And Joshua, speaking back to that young gentleman back in the day, what's the one bit of advice you'd give to that young Josh?
My long-winded answer would be, don't be afraid to fail, and specifically ask for feedback, ask for criticism. I don't want to I don't want a pat on the back to tell me what I'm doing well. I want to know when I'm not doing well, what my weaknesses are. I'm not listening to the delivery. I'm listening to the message, and use those to improve. Just be positive about it. Take it on the chin, and try to grow and learn, because that's what it's all about.
Hell yeah. FAIL stands for first attempt in learning, right? That's one thing we always want to love that, right? And Montoya, are there any shout outs you'd like to give on today's show?
Just to the Yapily team. Keep doing amazing things, guys.
Hell yeah. Please say hello to Claudia for me as well. And Joshua, any shout outs for yourself?
I'll just piggyback that. Shout outs to our commercial team, to the SDR team, AE team, and obviously everyone that we work with in the process. Like when I get the credit for closing a deal, there's 8 people who played a part in that in Yapily. It's not just me. I just, like I said, glorified secretary that facilitated the deal. So it's always a team effort. So yeah, shout out.
Hell yeah. Love it. Thank you. And a big thank you to all of our listeners, watchers, and subscribers that have been joining us on this journey with Joshua and Montoya today from Yapily. Again, you'll be able to find their LinkedIn URLs in the show notes, so please connect and ask them any questions that you have off the back of this show. And again, if you're listening to this on a local podcast platform, please make sure that you give us a rating and subscribe. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe down below. But Joshua and Montoya, thank you so much for being guests on today's special episode of A Dynamic Duo. I wish you both a great week and happy selling.
Thanks for having us, Neil.
Thanks for having us.